Joel, man, thanks so much for coming back on the show here today. Third appearance. Very excited to have you back on. Could you start by just telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sounds good. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me, Mike. Always appreciate being on your show. You do an awesome job. And I love the questions, the thought process behind reading the questions you wrote. And yeah, so for people who aren't familiar with me and my work, and I appreciate the topic of jump training today, just because
Oh, yeah.
that's a lot of my start in the field. So basketball and track were my big sports, track and field jump specifically, and then did strength and conditioning in the collegiate sector for about 12 years. Coached track in collegiate, club, and now high school for, it's about 20 now. I'm turning 42
wow.
this year. So almost 20 years of that.
That's cool.
Yeah, I do a lot of writing and education and kind of like the speed, explosiveness jump, but then also a growing thing I'm doing as well that I haven't necessarily written about, but youth sports, coaching youth sports, and a lot of intersections in between, as I'm sure we'll get to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And talk to me, what's new since the last time you were on? I think I had to go back and look. You were 2019, 2021. I don't know how it's been 4 years. I think maybe I've been on your show, so we've interacted some, but what's new in the last 4 years, man?
We have. I think the last show, it may have been when my wife got me a pair of rollerblades and I was skating around my neighborhood.
Okay.
And I think that was 2021. Yeah. Man,
right.
I say that I need to get back to doing that again, because I was on a big kick of, I found a park. Actually, it was like a backwoods area of a nearby church that had a lot of land. And there's like a creek that ran down through there, and I got really into running. Yes, creek running.
Yes, I do remember that. Yes, that's so funny.
So maybe I was talking about that too. But yeah, since then, the biggest shifts have been I've gotten into coaching high school track, which was not an opportunity for me before being in college NCAA realms. And so that's been good and really rewarding. Outside of that, I may or may not have finished, depending on the time we did the last podcast, a few courses. Like I did a sprint acceleration course and a few mini courses related to speed. And that's just where, again, I really appreciate the jump piece, just because sometimes I think the market actually caters a little more to speed than jumping. If you just have to say generally speed versus jumping, there's more on the world of speed. And so sometimes I forget how much I love jumping. I do post on it pretty regularly, but I always love a good jumps conversation. It is my first love as an athlete. And so, yeah, that course, mini courses, coaching more youth sports, soccer, basketball, and then flag football, which was good because I never played football. And it's just one of those things where I think it can be a little intimidating if you didn't play football and you're not used to that culture and mentality, because it is war. It's a line. You also get people who, as with many legacy sports, you get a lot of over the top elements if it's a legacy sport, if it's baseball, if it's football. And so, but it was good for me because I think a lot of me would just steer clear of that entirely. But it was good for me to be in it coaching. I learned a lot, and I was also able to see a lot of those elements and the things flag football. You talk about agility training. I mean,
for sure.
Even agility you get doing that is going to so far surpass anything you really get in other sports, because the other sports are just too complex for the kids. And versus like, here's the ball, go run away from these people, don't get your flag pulled. So it's been really good to see the speed and power pieces of what each sport offers. And looking at it through that lens of sport first, the more sports I've been able to coach has been a really good for my own lens. And then to take that, even if it's a general training session, to be able to take that into the general training session. So those are, I will get carried away if I keep saying what's new. So I'm sorry. I will stop. But that's been really good lately.
Dude, I think at some point we need to circle back and we'll just do a whole show on youth sports and coaching youth sports, because I've done the same thing. Right? I've coached over the years baseball, softball, soccer, basketball, volleyball. I've not done football just because Cade wasn't really into that.
Yeah.
But dude, you pick up so much stuff, and then when you realize, hey, if I can teach this to like a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old, you can absolutely teach it to somebody in high school, college, or professional. Right?
Yes.
Like you can tear it down to its base core elements, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is actually really easy. It also helps you understand how universal movement is.
Yeah.
Right? Like across sports. Like if you can teach somebody to shuffle, that carries over to like 6 or 7 different sports.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
Yeah, we could easily go on that tangent, but let's save it because, as you mentioned, I just want to talk about jumping. Like, I'm fascinated with jumping. You're fascinated with jumping, so let's just start there. Like, why did you get so interested in jumping in the first place?
Sure, that it's interesting for me to look back on it, and I remember it very clearly. It was a day in maybe third or fourth grade. Maybe it was fourth or fifth. I'm probably taking it too early, but I remember there were these beams in our school classroom. I went to a small school and it was a little older building, and there was these large wooden beams, like probably they were like 2 feet by maybe 4 inches wide, and they were vertical. And so, and they were on the top of the class. And I remember none of the other kids could touch them. Like one day, some kids were just trying to touch these beams and they couldn't do it. And then I went up and I touched the beam, and everyone's like, "Oh, Joel's got hops; he can jump." And I think, as I wouldn't call myself a failed soccer player, but as somebody who, soccer was my first sport, and I loved it, but I just didn't have. I wasn't. Anyone who's coached youth soccer, the aggressive kids, and I just wasn't. The chaos was too much for me, and I just didn't have the confidence. I think I had some decent athletic qualities, but and I got good once all the good kids went to select. Then I started dominating, and I thought I just got a lot better, and I think I did. But soccer was not. It was not. I just wasn't like this amazing innate athlete. But then, that first time I was asked to jump, or it was like a competitive thing, or like it's a showcasing thing, I was good at it. And part of that is just because honestly, I was taller than other people. I have really long arms, so that gave me the sense that I was probably jumping higher than these other kids, like actual vertical. When it very well may have just been the same. But because I had that sense and I could do this thing, I did it all the time. And if you talk to a lot of jumpers, they'll just tell you they love jumping. They fell in love with jumping. They were obsessed with jumping. And so it just became this game of trying to touch higher beams. Like there was other places in the school with beams that were higher. And I always had this track in my mind of what part of the school had the highest beam. And I was like, oh, that kid in 2 grades up can touch this beam. I want to be able to do that someday. And even to the point where I was like jumping up the stairs and seeing how many stairs I could jump up. Or obviously it became trying to touch the rim. And I remember being able to get net, like maybe it was 5th or 6th grade and whatever net it was. And then I could touch the rim by the time I was in 7th. I remember that was the first time, early 7th grade, and then dunked by just out of 8th grade. And I was 6 foot by then. So, but gosh. it was just, that was just my thing. And I realize now I look at, like my parents' builds, and the build world and the infrasternal angle and how is your skeleton. My skeleton is very much built to be a pretty good one-leg jumper. Outside of the hobby of strength and conditioning that has put a lot of muscle mass relative to what I can handle on my frame, which is maybe a little less of a good one-leg jumper over time. But my frame is also just good at it. And so that love of jumping intertwined with basketball at some point, it almost became like, I love basketball. I really did love the movement and shooting and stuff, but I just wanted to dunk. I just wanted to dunk in games, like in between pickup games, trying to do dunks and all that stuff. And then that turned into track and field, and then high jump, long jump, triple jump, and other events as well. So it all started with a love of it, an obsession from when I was a young child. But even before then, I also just loved movement. Like I remember playing tag and pretending I was Speedy Gonzalez, this Looney Tunes character, to make myself run faster. So I always loved the pursuit of physicality, but just jumping got attached to that early because I just had that success with it.
Yeah, success is huge, and that's something I don't think you can discount, because personally, I was not a great jumper when I played basketball. It wasn't until I transitioned more to volleyball, and then just the sheer volume of jump training, right? Like you can get away in basketball with not jumping high, like you can figure out ways around it. But when I played volleyball, it's like, no, you have to jump, and I had to jump a lot. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, number one, I figured out I was not a one-leg jumper. I was definitely a two-leg jumper, again, based on my archetype and frame. But once I started to practice that more and figured out what worked, I was like, oh, now I do enjoy this more. So success is huge. But I think one of the things that I would love to hear from you, because I love your breakdowns, right? And I think I plugged you last time. I'm going to say it again. If you don't follow Joel on IG, definitely make sure you do that, because you have some fantastic breakdowns. And I love the one the other day where you were showing the guy jump. You show him coming in and loading his system and exploding up. Could you start at a base level? Let's say somebody's just watched people jump, but they haven't really thought about what goes on under the hood. Could you give us the differences between a good one leg versus a good two leg jump?
Sure. Yeah, it's night and day in some respects. Like if you scan across the archetypes and to steal Bill's like the widest of wides and the narrowest of narrows, have the gorilla on one side and like the little pogo sticky person on the other.
Yep.
You can have people who are just completely and utterly designed to jump off a single leg, and then people who are very much, two leg is going to be their thing. And then you have a lot in the middle. But a single leg jump is very much predicated on the continuation of momentum. And so for children, it's the first and easiest way to jump their highest. Like if you ask a bunch of kids to jump as high as they can, I actually will do this in my yard. I have like these dog agility hurdles that I will train on. And they're like, it's like, hey, kids, go train on the dog toy. Like, but they go up like 35 inches or something. And I'll set the kids like jumping over them. Like they'll get in a line and they want to see how high they can get because it's just fun. And you see how it's just going to be innate that they're going to be the best off one leg and it's going to be the easiest. It's just the easiest thing. I remember my daughter when she's 4, like kind of, I maybe 4 or 5, but it was not hard for her to figure out the one leg just because it's not far off of skipping in the gait cycle. It's just one more little thread down the line. But two leg takes a lot more things. Running two leg does. Standing is simple. Anyone can do a standing jump, but to actually run and jump off 2 feet, like you mentioned with volleyball, Mike, there's a few more pieces in there, tracks, if you will, that get laid down over time. To really jump off the run, you actually, I believe this, I didn't see this till really probably 3 or 4 years ago. I really saw it, but change of direction, like agility cut, like a 5-10-5 cut is very closely related, more than you would think, to a running 2 leg jump and change of direction. So a lot of kids will not display a really effective 2 leg running jump until they also get some semblance of change of direction ability. And I have, so with the 2 leg jump, it's funny because I have the Vert trainer it's called the Dunk Camp. Andy Nicholson runs this out in Utah. It gets all the best dunkers in the world out there. And he has this little bell you jump and touch instead of a Vertec, and I'll set it up in the garage, and the kids all want to do it. They love it. But for that, most of them jump off 2 just because it's like the precision of doing that. And it's just rough. Like to watch kids who are 6 to 9 years old do this. The only ones who can are kids who play all the sports. Like the older kids who do all the sports, you can see they're starting to put the tracks down. They've done flag football and agility. And like that's what, to your point as well, with the volleyball and just reps, I think it's very similar to flag football and reps of agility. It's just you get better because you might not get that thing in another sport the way when it is the sport. Flag football agility is the sport.
It's the thing,
It's the thing. And so these kids have, a lot of them just run and kind of do this awkward jump stop and then jump. And that's how, if you watch like an Olympic weightlifter who hasn't played a lot of sports, that's kind of how they jump. They run in, they're square to the hoop or whatever they're touching, and they kind of do like a running squat. But an actual running 2 leg jump is really a jump and a turn. And that's where athleticism comes in. It's rotational, and you're using rotational energy to help you deflect yourself off the ground. So to put it shortly, 1 leg jumping is essentially a continuation of gait. It's a continuation of skipping, and it's a deflection, but 2 leg is as well. It also is partly a kick. So 1 leg, I think I took to 1 leg well because I also played soccer. And so that swing leg coming through is another big one. So it's like you're skipping off the ground, but now you apply this big swinging leg to it that delivers momentum.
Gotcha.
That's a big chunk of it. And I actually kicked so hard it screwed up my high jump for, like, it was such a big part of how I jump because of soccer and just being tall and lanky that I almost overdid it. I don't know, but you get a lot out of that swinging leg. And as people grow in their skill of single leg jumping, they learn to manage that swinging leg better. And it doesn't just mean drive your knee. That's what everyone says. It's not just that. And so then, and again, single leg is also very much it helps a lot to be built well for it, long and spindly. The 2 leg, the running 2 leg is more, it's kind of like a mix of a standing vertical, a change of direction and agility, And that's, I guess that would be, I was thinking about, and I guess there's an arm swing in there too. So
yeah,
that without complicating it further, that's the way I see those.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. That's helpful. And like, how would you unpack that perfect 2-leg jump? Like, how, if you're teaching, say, maybe it's like a 14 or 15-year-old kid, right? They are maybe like built more like you, right? They're really good off one leg, but you want to teach them how to be strong and powerful off two. Because sometimes in a sport like basketball, it is contextual, right? Sometimes you need to like gather and go off two to have more balance or control. How would you describe, like, what are the key constituents, I guess, to help you unlock that solid 2-foot approach jump?
Yeah. So there's a few things with that. I'm very much, and it would probably be good to cover the idea of, I think it's called movement optimism, or the idea that if you give an athlete a task, they're going to do the task with the best they have on the table.
Yes.
And I do think that's true. And I think that you know, coaching and cueing can play a role, but I would much rather, and I'll just say this, most of the people I coach for the sake of jumping are 20 and 30 somethings. And then there's some masters track athletes that are sprinkled in there, but by and large it's 20 and 30 somethings. And so people who already have an athletic base down.
Yeah.
And so I go one of two ways with them. So I'll speak to this first, and then I'll speak to what I would do for a younger athlete. But I'll get to that. So with an older athlete, a lot of times it's either creating circuits and constraints that combine those elements. So for example, I mentioned a running 2-leg jump it's a mixture of change of direction and vertical. So I might do something like, if they're out at a basketball court, we could do 4 exercises. And one is you go do your running jump off 2 legs. The second one is a depth jump. So that's that 2-leg bounce piece. The third one might be something just like a vertical medicine ball throw, a general explode. And the fourth one would be COD. So go run like a COD cross court. And so the goal is that you are taking on the COD piece is showing up more when you actually jump. The turn from COD will show up stronger. It's also nice because usually it's a little bit longer burst, and that energetically is good. But then you also get the depth jump, which tricks the body into more output. So for me, a lot of it is that for one end of things. And then the other one would be encouraging the athlete to use an exploratory technique to reach their best. And what I mean by that is a motor learning, without getting too dry. As soon as you say motor learning, it's like
people start to, their eyes roll over.
Oh man, it gets bad. But this is really important, because differential learning in a nutshell says that instead of an ultimate technique or teaching an optimal or teaching an ideal technique, you will be better off if you try every iteration of that technique under the sun. So Wolfgang Schulhorn is a famous learning researcher, and he found in like shot put with that age group, like I think 14, 15 years old, he had one group coached up to the ideal technique, another group, hey, you're doing 200 ways you could throw the shot put. I don't even know how you come up with 200 ways. I would love to see that. I think it might have been 260 ways. But the group that did 260 ways to throw the shot put just blew away the optimal group. And so that just speaks to, well, hey, the more different iterations of, let's say it's a 2-foot jump, change of direction you can do. So if you have a really good base of like, agility and flag football and soccer, and then you go play volleyball and you have a bunch of different angles. I mean, volleyball, it's not just one way, it's a bunch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you got that. You may be throwing track and field in there, even though it's a single leg jumping, and you're going to be flying. And I probably don't need to tell you that much about how you should be jumping. And even like dunking and lower in basketball, like a lot of if you do a 360, you have to turn harder. Or if you do an alley-oop to yourself, there's a visual and you take further off away. So now that's a different iteration. And so just that art of practicing all these different types of jumps. I know it's fairly common, I believe, in the dunk community. A lot of people just say, hey, just get stronger and do lower rim dunking and just dunk a lot. And I think there's simply something to be said with that. So again, on one end, I'll build out circuits that combine these elements that I find favorable. Yeah. And for one leg, it would be, you could replace like one of those elements. You could replace COD with bounding or something, or you can keep COD in there. You just throw in pieces that all fit. So it's differential learning, but now it's in a circuit. And then, the other way is I'll say, all right, there's the differential learning, but then I can also do an exploration. I'll say, all right, people will say, oh, you got to take a long penultimate or whatever. And I think, yeah, I mean, if you practice enough, that should just happen. All good jumpers didn't have someone teach them how to do that. They just did it because they had enough experience under their belt. But what I say sometimes for an experienced athlete will be, okay, try jumps in circuits of 3 or sets of 3 clusters. The first one, take a really long penultimate. The second one, take a really short penultimate. The third one, just see what feels good. See what your body wants to do in this case. Or I'll have a constraint where I might put dots on the ground. So I'll put a dot and have 2 dots near the takeoff. So they have to go, they hit their penultimate, and then they take off wherever the 2 dots are. But there's no optimal. It's always mixing it up. Like, all right, sometimes it's going to be long, sometimes it's going to be short. Honestly, it's probably going to be fun because usually most of us have a program our brain runs when we go to jump. So this kind of breaks that program. So you're going to do different types. And you'll find if you make that penultimate too long, they're just going to have to leap to get there. And it's just going to mess it all up,
Yeah.
But say, hey, notice that. Notice how you had to go up to get to the final 2 steps. That didn't work. So now you know that. And that's the thing is if you just tell people long penultimate, that can mean a lot of things to different people. Like that may end up a lot of people actually jumping upwards and they're losing that forward momentum. And in reality, a good 2-leg jump is almost a fall. It's a slight fall downwards into that final turn of the plant. So there's this subtlety about how the body brings that together. So I'll explore. Yeah, I will go with an exploratory mode for those people who are interested in the jump technique part. A lot of people I work with are always trying to do different dunks anyways, and they're playing a lot. So they do get that naturally. So I will do an exploration. So then back to your question for the younger athlete, I got a 15-year-old in and maybe their jump technique isn't great. One is just differential learning, gamify jumping as many ways as we can do it. How many ways can we jump over 1 hurdle, 2 hurdles to a target, over a hurdle to a target? Like just gamify the heck out of it and make it fun and make it feel like you're tricking them into learning the technique, if that makes sense. They don't know the technique, but they're learning technique. And they're actually learning it more naturally than if I'm sitting there telling you, hey, you got to be doing it this way. And I think that can be a lot more beneficial. So then if we're doing that and we want to do a little bit more, then I may do like with the dots. Like I won't tell them a cue yet, unless I will say, I think the one cue that's universal that I'm okay with is if their posture and vision is bad. Like if they aren't really having a good like visual on the target, which most kids will, but if they let their posture really go and it sags down, okay, let's make sure that's good. But then I would go to like dots. Like, okay, if we want to play with exact parameters, now I'll put some dots on the ground. Hey, try some longer ones, try some shorter ones, try some where your last 2 steps actually hit a little farther apart. Here, try some where they hit closer. And so and then they might start noting what feels good. But if I just cue an athlete a few times and like, oh, okay, I think that look good, they're going to go to their sport and forget everything. And what matters is the memory that shows up in sport. And that memory is really stuff that comes from differential learning. It comes from just how jumping a bunch of different ways, a bunch of different times, and letting that natural learning process really bring itself around.
Yeah. Well, 2 things come to mind. Number one, when you're having like the different dots and the different strategies and setups, number one, that's just more game specific, right? So if they're not like going to be a long jumper or triple jumper or high jumper, something of that nature, that's way more game specific, right? Yeah. Because you can't count your steps or somebody's closing down a space. So you have to find different strategies. So I love that. But also something you mentioned that I've been trying to do, and it's been just trial and error, is like you alluded to, I'm just trying to get these kids to jump in as many different ways as possible and let them organically figure out, hey, what feels best, what strategy is best? Because again, when they're in the gym, there's not necessarily an outcome that has to happen, right? If you're on a basketball court, the goal is to go get a block or it's to go, finish at the rim. Weight room, hey man, we're just trying to explore new stuff and try and make you a better all-around athlete. So I absolutely really, really like that part of it. With that being said, I would love to hear from you, like, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see with 2-foot jumping? Because again, I'm sure you coach it all, you've seen it all. What are the big mistakes that you see when people try and jump off 2?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I get to that, I wanted to mention one more thing that popped into my head with instruction. Yeah. It was kind of a thing where I'm like, all right, I'm not a little bit hypothetical in the sense of I say how I coach my older athletes and the differential piece, but this was something that I'm like, ooh, if I was working with an athlete right now, like 14, 15, they want to jump higher off 2 feet. And I work with high jumpers in high school, so 1 foot, and I'm happy to talk about what I'm doing there. But I did a post on Ryan Krauser, the shot put world record holder. This guy's like 6'7", 320 or something pounds.
Oh my.
Whatever it is, 150 kilos.
Tank.
And he's dunking. I mean, this guy, and he's getting his head like probably about 5 inches away from the rim. And again, 6'7", but that's still a good jump off 2 feet for a very large man. And he is so rotational. Like the way that his leg swings rotationally into position for the plant is very much like how he throws shot put. And I notice this is even more true in females than males. Like boys who grow up playing a lot of baseball and like, of course you got softball too with females, but it's a little more innate for boys to grow up, throwing stuff and throwing snowballs and playing baseball in the backyard, just like rotational, like swinging bats. And so something I would also look to do is just rotational pieces, like, yes, med ball throws, but also like maybe like a South African or a discus style med ball throw where you're spinning and pivoting and throwing and transferring energy. So I also view that if you're looking at a GPP standpoint, and I have athletes who are only playing 1, maybe 2 sports and they aren't doing track, but you want them to experience these rotational elements that, and if you look at Ryan Krauser dunk, it's like, holy cow, this guy is not just an average big strong dude jumping. He is using rotational energy phenomenally. And I even watch how like a lot of volleyball athletes jump, and but like women's volleyball, it's very long, loose, and whippy, which is great. But when you can kind of tighten up some of that angular swing speed, I think that could make that even better. So I was just going to say that's something I would look to throw in there if I'm tightening up my circuits for developmental athletes. All that being said, mistakes. So the big mistake I'll just say, because I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, you don't have a long penultimate or something. I mean, I like Jake Tura talks about baby pen. Because Jake is one of the guys who does the baby penultimate or a short last step. And I think if you're a wide infrasternal angle, more muscular type, you have more torque at the knee joint, and you're probably more of a bilateral lifter in the weight room versus maybe you're better at lunge patterns or whatever, you might favor a shorter penultimate because that's just how you move and operate. And that's where your greatest strength is. Now, and even in long jump and track, there's people who have short and long optimal movement types. So I wouldn't say, as a general rule, I like giving athletes time to work through the differential, all the different types, to help them figure out what their best is. Devin Hayes, who's a pitching coach of the Tigers, talks about pitching in that manner. He basically says, hey, let kids pitch how they're going to pitch till they're 17 or 18, or they kind of top out and then start messing with it, just because it's kind of like you don't want to pour too much into that cup. You let the athlete fill the cup up themselves as much as possible before you start throwing all your stuff in there. And I think we live in a world where, because we have so many people in the pot, so many coaches, and it's just we need to make money, we need to do our thing, and there's an expectation of coaching, and I get it, but the athletes should fill their cup first and most of the way. And we're just there to supplement and help guide that journey. And maybe we guide where the cup is placed. Hey, do more of these things, more of this thing. But the big thing I do see, and I do work on this is the first thing I look for, is I'll just call it like a linear versus a rotational arm swing. And so a lot of athletes I see who maybe they just didn't play a lot of sports, maybe it's a mental thing and just how they move. But instead of an arm swing that goes, I'm going to try to describe it. I guess a good way of thinking is like, just watch a bird take off and you see like a flapping unfolding of the wings. This is an Adarian Barr term. It's this like outwards unfolding. So instead of front to back, like a lot of athletes who don't use their arms well will just go straight front to back sagittal plane. It's a direct front to back line. And if you just stand there and do that and try to go fast with your arms, it's actually kind of hard. You have to use your pecs a lot, and it's very like versus if you take your arms out, elbows out to the side like a T, and then let your arms whip around the back, it's much more natural feeling. It's this natural elastic arc of motion. And so we'll do drills that involve just working the elbows out, back, and around, making the arm swing feel easy. A lot of times those athletes, even doing like rotational, if you ever seen like Fast and Loose, Pavel, without.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember that. I had it.
Yeah, Fast and Loose, baby. Just like that kind of idea, rotational. I mean, yeah, you can do front to back, but also like just twisting and letting your arms spin around the sides and feeling that rotational energy. And if you watch like John Morant, you may have mentioned a post I put together, and I had John Morant recently. And that guy is such an epitome of that flap action. Like, yes, very elastic, lean athlete, has the capacity for big external rotation ranges to get those arms out there. But it is like those elements of a bird's wings extending and flapping around elastically. It's not front to back. There's this 3D element. Sometimes these guys are so good, they even throw one arm kind of to the front and to the back. Like, that's a more advanced move. I'm not going to. That's something that I do enjoy playing with that maneuver, but that's something, again, these guys never were taught that. They just get it.
Figured it out.
So that, and Connor Barth, if anyone has ever seen the dunker Connor Barth, he does a very pronounced version. Like, his left arm like internally rotates in front of him and his right arm comes around the back, and then it just twists into this crazy rotation. And to my understanding, his differential between standing and running jump is very high, meaning he uses elastic energy insanely well. Right. And so there's something about that twisting flap that I think is very good to have. So what I'll try to work just elbows around, rotational arms. Yeah. Something I'm getting into that I think people who have a lot of time could do. I use this for track jumpers actually too, and I know this is 2 foot, but I use the flow rope. It's trendy, right? The flow rope, but doing like a dragon roll, it just does teach that side to side action. It's basically like a jump rope, but it's a little more nuanced. And then, finally, I'll do backwards jump roping, because backwards jump roping is that. You can't backwards jump rope without, I'm trying to do some video, like taking your arms out and around and generating energy that way. And then it comes forward more naturally. So backwards jump rope is one of the most simple ways to do that, and that also is a differential learning jump tool. Like, you should do that. Oh my gosh, and backwards too. If you can do backwards jump rope and change the direction real good, and just practice jumping at enough mediums, you're going to have a lot of really good tools to utilize all that energy really well.
Okay, I've got to admit, I'd like to think I'm a pretty good jump roper. Horrible in 4th grade. Jump for heart. I was literally the worst kid in the class. Came back the next year and I won because I was so embarrassed. Anyway, now that we're done with
is there video of this?
No. There's no. Come on, man. This is like 1988, bro. This is way back in the day. But I'm just trying to think about, like, I feel so comfortable jump roping forward. I can't imagine I could even string 2 together going backward. Like, just the neural complexity of that. I can't even imagine what that would be like. But I'm definitely going to have to try that one. One other topic, or one other question kind of on this thread, because I feel like we've talked about this before. What role should weights play in these elastic guys that want to jump better off 2, right? Because I do think there's some inherent benefit to, like, the bilateral stance, getting stronger off 2 legs. But what role do you feel like it should play in a 2-foot jump or enhancing a 2-foot jump?
Yeah, I think it's important to get stronger. The question mark is, how strong do you need to be? And I think that there's different types of jumpers that will need different benchmarks. And for the most part, if you're in a team sport and you move really well, I would say that benchmark is probably somewhere between 1.5 and 1.75 body weight if you use your feet well. Like, absolutely, everything works pretty well. If you're more just a pure power jumper and like, hey, I care about jumping really high even more than sports. you can bump that. That could get bumped. It could get bumped up to 2.0 or upwards. But what I find is that people who are above 175, a lot of times when you watch them jump, the heels get pushed down a little bit more in the phases relative to someone who can jump really high who squat is less. And there's a few things going into that. But just for simplicity's sake, if you're jumping, and especially that final front leg is coming around, if the heel's higher off the ground, especially initially, like look at a Jean Morant, Mac McClung makes a good use of his heels coming up a little bit more throughout the course of the jump. It basically, the front leg, it locks you more into that supination pathway where everything is just more expansive. You're a little bit more locked into the tendons in the foot. And so, you're still going to use strength there, but not in the same way that someone who's got like a 400-pound squat is going to use strength. They're going to want to use that engine a little bit differently. But the way I see it is, like, if I'm in team sport and I need to not only be really strong and powerful, but also really efficient, I want to do it over and over again, and I want to be a good mover, it's probably to your benefit to be able to use the forefoot better, use that rotational energy better, be a good mover. And I think it's helpful to know that, because I think a lot of people trying to jump higher may say, okay, oh man, well, I'm not jumping high enough because I don't squat enough. even though I'm working really hard in the weight room. And the way I would say is, look, if you're working really hard in the weight room, don't think the difference is necessarily because you just need to pound out more weights. There might be some movement pieces in there that could also help clean things up quite a bit. And I know, Ty Terrell, who we're both, pretty familiar with, he was on my podcast recently just talking about vertical jump increases that were made with zero increases in maximal force production. It was just learning to absorb more energy in the eccentric phase better and then output that. And so I think if you look at the archetypes of the athletes who are the most close to you and look at how strong they are, that can often be quite telling. But I know for myself, it's funny. Like I just made a post on this. I squat probably 75 pounds less than I did when I was in my mid 20s. And I'm 42 almost here. So I'm not jumping as high, but I'm not doing that bad with that being that much weaker. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And I weigh the same, which is funny, but it's just all the strength I have is just so much more specific. I could see how so much of it used to just be pure exhalation, compression, trying to smash that pelvic floor down and up, pushing the smash button on that, which it worked and jump high, but it's just nice to feel a little more efficient doing it. So I would say, I get stronger. I even like back squats and stuff. I mean, I prefer more zerchers and fronts. I know you've definitely evolved your squat patterning as well and what's ideal there. But I think it just depends a little bit on what type of jumper you are in addition.
Well, and I like the fact that I feel like for a while we were obsessed with like benchmarks, right? And these strength norms. And then we kind of got away from it. Like, does it really matter? And then now I do think like just some general rules and frameworks do help, right? Like I've got a couple guys that I work with in basketball, and look, man, they're as narrow can be, right? Like they're the most elastic creatures, but I want to keep them at like that 1.5 to, 1.7, somewhere in there. I feel like if they can either like a trap bar or some sort of squat variation, if they're in that range, they feel strong, right? It doesn't compromise their 1 foot takeoff, but they still have a 2 foot takeoff in the bag, and most importantly, those guys are generally the guys that coaches would say, they're not strong enough. They're not physical enough, or they get pushed around. If you've kind of got that strength foundation, then they kind of tick all those boxes without robbing them of that 1 foot takeoff, which we know that's really their superpower, right?
100%. For the sake of longevity too. Like, I mean,
absolutely.
That's always the big question. Even people making fun of LeBron, right? Like, king of longevity. I don't see him wheels.
Hey, dude, he can do his whatever 110 pound. I don't remember what that he posted a while back.
Sumo deadlift. sumo
deadlift squat. Yeah, I don't know. I was like, man, this guy makes like $50 million a year. He can't buy a squat rack to put his bar in. He's got to put it on like an AirX pad on his bench. But anyway, that's right. He's just on another level. Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears, because as much as I love talking about 2 foot jumping, I know you love talking about 1 foot jumping. And that's kind of the thing that I always struggled with. And I think part of it was I just didn't understand how to put those pieces together. So if you're describing to a beginner, or maybe one of your more advanced athletes, how would you describe kind of that perfect 1 foot vertical jump?
Sure. Yeah. So the thing that a lot of people, I guess maybe it'd be easier with, like, I like to amplify the air technique. So I'll say what doesn't help you.
Yeah, sure.
Jump off 1 feet is being a little bit more like someone who is very supinated, someone who's very on the outside edges of their feet, wide ISA type, like a lot of lateral width. And what you need to be able to jump off one is having a narrow base of support really helps. Basically, you have a narrow base of support. You can plant pretty well at midline of your body, and you can work your swing leg effectively. Those are some really important pieces. Another really important piece, and I'm understanding this a lot more now, especially within the last year. And it was just somewhere in the intersection of all the biomechanical, all this new biomechanical stuff that's out there, as well as you would see a client who is just really, really compressed. I'd watch their one leg jump, and I would just be like, whoa, like this would jump out to me. And that is at the moment of plant. So at that moment I plant, a really good one leg jumper is generally going to have more distance between their head, the top of their head, and wherever their takeoff foot is. And it's this extensibility. You see it show up the most in high jump, because there's also this lateral path you run. But someone who could jump really high, like if you watch any elite high jumper and they plant, if you drew a line between where their foot hits in front of them and their head, it's really long. And part of that, it is the raw levers, but it's also the ability to just cross that plant leg into the midline. So you get even a little more distance.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, you're just, it's just really, really, you could have all the power in the world, but you're just not drawing the right lines to set up the potential of the jump. And that would be a word that I would use, would be a good one leg jump. You have to have a lot of potential, both in your frame and then how you set up the levers before anything else happens. So a good elastic one leg jumper is a master of setting up the levers of the jump ahead of time. And again, it can be a very natural thing. Like kids, it is continuation of running. But the things that make you struggle with it is, just planning on the midline of the body. Sometimes you'll watch like people sprint from the front. And if you see someone sprint from the front and they just don't get the feet anywhere near midline, like it looks like their feet are coming down right under each hip,
Oh, yeah.
That person's probably going to struggle quite a bit to jump off one leg because they are going to struggle to get, you could call it like head over foot. Like if they long jump, they're going to have to shift over that foot to really get a plant. But to take it up, you have to be able to really get that leg to extend in front of you and get that little cross in the midline. Or you're just going to have a hard time with it. And that does come easier to the narrow ISA archetype, but not to say wides can't do it. They're just not going to have that just straight potential that your skinny narrow is going to have.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And, the other thing that I thought of immediately when you talked about that was not just like this vertical distance, but like the opposing nature of that, right? So imagine if somebody does have to like compress and squish, right? Just like the time factor, right? Where they have to dampen, because you alluded to it early on, like a one leg takeoff is incredibly momentum dominant, right? Like you need that momentum and that storage of energy. And if you can't, let me circle back. If you dampen and shorten yourself, right, you're inherently losing and robbing yourself of that energy. So that was the first thing I thought of was like that vertical compression to try and tighten or stiffen, slow things down, whatever. Well, you're not going to get that same level of recoil, right?
100%. And the thing that teaches me a lot that I don't think I'd had the perspective full circle is working with track, because track is extremes. Like basketball, you're going to get a lot of kind of middle of the road, like in terms of specialization, one leg jumpers. In track, you get extreme specialization. So it offers a lot of interesting things to see there. But what you tend to see with track a lot is if you over strength train a really narrow, like one leg jumper, and you compress them to the point they can't get that expansion they need right at that moment of plant, it will take away their ultimate height. And what's interesting is Cliff Revelto is a world famous coach. He was at Kansas State for a long time. Maybe he still is. I think he retired. But he had an equation for a good high jumper. Again, extreme. But he had an equation where basically he would have you take 3 steps and jump off one leg and touch however high you could. And then he would get your max standing 2-foot vertical. And he wanted that difference to be as far apart as you could, meaning, let's say I can jump and touch 40 inches off one leg on 3 steps. That'd actually be pretty good.
That'd be pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's say my standing vert is 33. It would be better for me as a high jumper to be able to touch that 40 and actually only have a 27-inch standing vert. And I know that sounds crazy, but the reason why is because if I only have a 27-inch standing, that means I'm even more expansive. That means I'm so bad at internally rotating down to the ground. I just am pure expansion and potential for bouncing like a stick off the ground. And so that is where you get to the extreme. And obviously most team sport athletes, you want to be pretty good at both, So I don't even know. I feel like I'm losing. I kind of got lost in that one a little bit, but
no. That was perfect. But and here's what I would say. That's to the point where like, hey, the reason that person is strength training is just to keep themselves healthy, right? Because you want that massive differential, right? And we know if we strength train, we're probably going to narrow that up a little bit. But hey, if that is if that's the model and we want to differentiate as much as we can, that would be like, okay, how little strength training can I do to keep them healthy while still representing this differential that allows them to operate at peak performance, right? Because hey man, you go out and you just never strength train, you do have the tendency of like blowing up some tendons or overuse stuff. So that's a really interesting thought process. I never would have thought about it like that.
Yeah, 100%. But what you said is totally right on. You have to have some strain in the system to keep tissues healthy. And the one other caveat I will say, and I do find this interesting, because track on the extremes, you're going to get the most extreme type of single leg jumper, which I would call, I guess, the hip ankle jumper archetype. Like if you look at Yaroslava Mahuchich, she's the world record holder on the women's side. Her knee bends it's got to bend a little, but it bends only a few degrees when she plants. And almost all the motion happens at the ankle and hip joint. And that is perfect if you want to be a single leg jumper in like high jump. Most basketball players are going to bend the knee a lot more. Like if you watch LeBron James take off one leg, he's going to bend the knee a lot more than she does. And if you watch like even on the men's side of high jump, this is a little bit of an anomaly, but if you watch like Stefan Holm, who's the men's height over head world record holder, he actually bends his knee a fair amount, more than you would think. And that guy's got a good squat. Like there's videos of him squatting, like taking, I don't know, 260, 270, probably weighs like 150 pounds, like deep for multiple reps. And I think he had to do that because he actually had a pretty big knee moment. So not all single leg jumps are built the same. But a lot like that very prototypical, the neuro ISA, especially the one who has a hard time, like just squatting deep. And you can elevate their heels, right, too. And I think that's good for a lot of them. But if you try to take a lot of those like female type, really one leg types and flat foot back squat them, it's going to be a disaster for their skeletal structure, especially if you try to load it up. And I think that's why a lot of them prefer quarter and half squats. If you were actually to watch their programming, it tends just to be that many times.
Yeah. Okay. What are the biggest mistakes you see in a 1 foot jump?
Yeah. So the biggest one that prevents people. So I see a lot of this coaching high school track because it's funny. I feel like track's changed, or maybe it never was this way, but I wish I got kids off the basketball team and the volleyball team and the football team. I don't. I get like my best men's high jumper, boys high jumper last year was a guy who was a JV sprinter and eventually just did high jump. And so it's like, and didn't really have a jump background. And so I'm trying to figure out, I'm just trying to find all the ways that we can fill in these gaps. And so for him, and I find for most people who really just struggle, and this is the easiest toggle, is it's people who can't reference the heel well. So you have to be able to use the whole foot to slow yourself down enough to reconvert. And so people who are very forefoot oriented are going to have it's not going to be as natural to them to slow themselves down. And I also mentioned like being able to get that leg out in front of you. If you're forefoot oriented, you're just going to put the foot down underneath you, Yeah. So you have to have that ability to reference the heel. And so from a plyo perspective, that is where you're doing the little rudimentary hops and you're trying to reference heel. A lot of times I'll do them backwards first because it's kind of like it's easier for them to hit the heel first in that situation. So we'll do backwards first. And then we'll go lateral, like rudiment hops or your 2-leg hops lateral, because now you get to feel the foot kind of shifting side to side. I guess that would be like a mid-stance thing. So it's like early stance, right? We want to start an early stance, so we go backwards. Then we want to do mid-stance, so we go laterally. And I also want them to feel their ankle turning when I'm like turning my hands on the screen. I want them to feel their ankle actually inverting and everting, because as high jump especially, but even sport, you want to be able to have the ankle, it doesn't just stay stiff. You want it to actually have motion. The body likes that option. And then we'll go to the forwards jumping. And a lot of people, I don't know, there's a pet peeve of mine, but like I see a lot of people like they thrive on the toes up cue. And a lot of times I just see the athlete actually extending their quads and taking their legs forward awkwardly to make that happen. And I'm just like, I just tell my athletes, like, let me lift your toes up in your shoe. Like the foot's still flat, lift your toes up in the shoe. That is a characteristic of good high jumpers too. They can lift those toes up in the shoe. That winds up the windlass in the foot, and it gives them just a more stable foot to plant on with all those forces coming down. And so I'll just try to get them to hop and at least get the toes up in the shoe rather than the whole system coming up. I think that subtle nuance works a little better. It says what the foot actually should be doing a little more. And so we'll work that, and then we can work that into skipping. Sometimes I'll even work it into their approach. I'll be like, hey, on your approach, let's feel some flat foot contacts coming in and see if you can hold on to those. So for athletes who struggle to convert that energy, those are some items that I'll do. But for all my athletes who they get it, I don't really spend time on that stuff. I just do the different types of jumping and let them be athletes. So for athletes who struggle, though, we tend to go there.
I like that. Yeah, it's one of the things where, I think you probably came up in a similar age where like the heels were like the worst thing in sports,
Yep.
right? Never be on your heels. And then you start to realize, no, heels are actually very important if you want to be able to decelerate and store energy. And so like one of the athletes that I'm working with right now, I'm thinking of, he's a very elastic guy, but he tends to go off too because his heel contacts are horrible, right? So he just blows through it and he's immediately on his forefoot. So he opts for a 2-foot jump. And I'm like, hey, man, I think we can really unlock this 1-foot jump, but we have to get him to find his heels and get comfortable there. So I love that you mentioned that. If somebody just absolutely sucks, right? Like, and I'm not going to say you're a track guy, but let's say you get somebody like that, right? Like, hey, they're not going to play basketball anymore. They're going to move to track. They want to try high jump. Where would you have them start?
Yeah. Okay. So someone who's really bad at jumping and they're in basketball or
No. They've moved. They've just decided basketball's not for me. I'm not going to make that team. I don't know how it is there. Here at Kendall's high school, it's like 3,700 kids. So track is a no-cut sport. So some kid comes to you, hey, I want to be a high jumper, right? Can you teach me how to high jump? They have no skills off 1 foot. Where are you going to have them start?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So this is one of my favorite things because a lot of kids that I get are kids who haven't played a team sport in several years. And so, like you said, track is a no-cut sport. And part of my vision for how I train athletes is I want to make the fullness of sport experience. I want you to get that in a practice. So we do a lot of gamified jumps early on. We do a lot of stuff with a tennis ball. And at first it has nothing to even do with technique. Like it'll be, all right, everyone gets a tennis ball. You're going to throw it and bounce it. And you're going to hop after it on one leg. And you have to catch it off one bounce every time. And we'll do that where, okay, now try to throw it farther and hop on one leg and go catch it. Stuff like that on the basic level. Or you have a partner and you're hopping laterally. So you're facing each other, hopping sideways, and you're throwing the ball back and forth. So we're just trying to get a lot of general gamified fun contacts. Now, I could get that the same way. All right, we're going to go through these plyometric batteries and you're going to learn this. And that would be, I'm sure the kids who are very organized and want to and think and operate that way would be fine with that. I'm also going to get a lot of kids like, oh, when do we finally get to jump? And, when do we get to that?
Right.
I want, my goal is for the whole practice to be a flow state where it's just all genuinely enjoyable. And we'll also do like emergent jumps. So that might be one partner is going to throw the ball up in the air and the other person will run and jump and grab it in the air. Kind of like an alley-oop, when someone's got
sure.
throw the ball up and you're trying to get it. So we want to get emergent jumps in that manner. If I had more time to get the hurdles out, like the collapsible, just because I don't trust track hurdles, but we would do a lot of like the home hurdle type things you see where it's like high hurdles, you run and jump off one leg and get a rhythm. But what we tend to do instead of that is I just try to high jump in a lot of different ways. So we'll say, all right, we're going to do the regular high jump. We're going to do the old scissors or straddle roll high jump, and just teaching people it's so funny. I can barely do it. I'm like, this is hard. I don't know how anyone jumped 7 feet 8 like that back in the day. It must have been an animal. But like, it's kind of like, and learning that jump, it's like a ballet. You kind of have to stand on one leg and in place, you jump and swing your leg high, kind of like a gainer almost, but not really. And then you land on the other leg. And so they're just getting a lot of fun, different jumps that it's not like, all right, you have to jump like this. But then where we end up going becomes we do bounding buildups. We try to teach the flat of the foot. So a big one is bounding buildups at the end of practice or as part of the warm up. It's like, okay, you're going to just hit flat every time. And that's as much instruction as I want to give because I just think that paralysis that goes beyond that could just be, it's not fun. It's not my vibe. And then say, okay, now see how far you can make this bound, still having the flat foot idea. Now we'll challenge coordination. We'll go left, right, and all this type of stuff. So we'll do that. And then I also, for track and high jump, I use the approach as a big chance to also learn jumping. So we might skip for distance on the approach. We might do straight leg bounding on the approach. Straight leg bounding is a really good one too, to kind of get that idea of that straighter lever and getting, you can, if you want to say scrape the ground, I don't love that cue. I really don't like that for sprinting actually, but for jumping, that can get you the idea of a straight leg that gets that heel down and more extensibility. We do a lot of different distances, a straight leg bounce fast, straight leg bounce long and bouncy. And so, or we'll do 1, 2, 3 and jump, or I'll put little mini hurdles and they do 3 steps and jump. And then they keep repeating that. So we just try to get a ton of jumps. It's not technically specific, but by the end, I want them to be generally coordinated and able to do these things. Gallops is another big one. I'm sorry, I'm just like rambling. Like it's like my mind.
No.
Hey, here, Mike. Here's what we do. Galloping is a really big one because that is also a baseline of single leg jumping skill. Because kids who, if you can gallop and you can keep the front leg in front of the system, that's kind of what you need to set up a one leg jump. A lot of people who can't jump off one leg and you have them gallop, they like to bend the front leg and put the foot under the hip more readily. Like they treat it more like a single leg squat to propel versus really being able to push off the back leg. Like the back leg is propelling you, but the front leg is absorbing. It's a dual rule system versus people who aren't as good at that. They kind of just push with both legs, or they really cross the legs lazily. So I try to do a lot of gallop, like we do galloping into jumping. And so I just try to make it fun and rhythmic and going through all these different types. And we'll work it that way. And if I had more stuff, if I had low rim hoops, we would dunk on low rims. If I had all my hurdles in the gym, which I may bring this year, we would do a lot more jumping over hurdles in various ways. And I just think that gamified as many ways you can jump, and then whatever else you're doing, and make it rhythmic and have a lot, again, differential learning. That's my approach to it.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. I'm just buzzing with different ideas, and I've got more high school kids now. So it's really fun because for many years, so much of my training was revolving around pros, and it's a different mindset. It's a different approach. It's very much, hey, these guys just need to get, and girls, they just need to get healthy. They need to get back to, peak performance for them, and they can go do what they do. But now with these more developing athletes, I'm always looking for new stuff, and this has been really helpful. Okay, so last but not least, I've got our lightning round. So 5 fairly short questions, but your answer can be as long or short as you like. Okay. Number 1, the best dunker you've ever seen is?
Oh yeah, I saw this question. That's such a hard question. I mean, I'll just say
I know it's hard.
I mean, the two that stick in my mind, because I think that they were, I mean, I guess just it's that time where dunking is getting so popular on YouTube, and it's in the front of everyone's minds, is you have Jordan Kilganone, Isaiah Riviera. I mean, I think Jordan's more the original because he's kind of like the Pistol Pete Maravich of dunking. Like you talk about differential learning. That guy's got so many dunks he has invented. Then Isaiah has that just straight power and vertical and a lot of good dunk technical ability as well. So, I mean, I look at what those guys are doing. I'm just like, holy cow, that's amazing. And then I'm sure there's a lot of others, but those are just because of where I was at that place. Those are the guys that really I think are just incredible. And I love, I will say too, I think Isaiah's probably similar, but back to like the differential learning, Jordan dunked every day, like growing up. And he played all the sports too, but like, I think that base is so good and then he eventually started lifting later, like 16, 17, 18 or whatever. But the base was all the types of jumps.
It was already there.
He's a guy I study with, like how he puts his joints together. And again, no one taught him. It's just, he had that base, and he had the love for it. That's just
right. Well, it's hard. You can't get around the 10,000, 100,000 reps that he probably took to figure out whatever is ideal for him. Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Okay. Number 2. It's probably equally hard. The craziest vertical you've ever seen belongs to?
Oh man, like standing or just straight up, like the highest a human has gotten off the ground.
However you want to define it, sir.
I mean, I guess if you had to be technical, I would say Stefan Holm and Franklin Jacobs, just because they both have the height over head world records in high jump. So that being that, and I know that they're starting to do a running jump. The dunk camp's doing a running vertical jump record now. And I think 2 guys have it at 51, like official. And I don't know if it's a 2-hand overhead or a straight. I think it's a straight single arm touch, which is actually even higher than what an NFL combine would be. So I think that's that's a Dak, King Dak on Instagram. And then there's another guy, another Isaiah Espinoza, I think. So those guys are getting up. It's super impressive. And it's like a video game, honestly. I think the high jump looks the most like a video game just because it's like this bar and you're twisting. I mean, but it's all amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, number 3, the greatest jumper of all time. And I'll let you school me here. It can be triple, vertical, long jump, whatever. This is just your opinion. The greatest jumper of all time is?
Yeah, so I like, I saw this question. I was thinking the thing that came to mind is probably Mike Conley Sr. So Mike Conley Jr. was in the NBA, but Sr. was He was a triple jumper. I think he also did long jump pretty decently. He was really fast. 200 time was just about world class as well. And I think he was the American record holder in the triple jump for a while. And then he entered the, like, whatever the dunk contest was with all the stars, and he took on and he dunked from literally, it was behind the free throw line. It was like an inch behind it, I believe. And this guy's 6'2" and dunked 2 hands. Like, that's insane. I don't know the other dunks he did, but that like range of skill sets is incredible. And I'm sure his standing vertical was really good as well. Triple jumpers tend to have the best standing vertical of all the track jumpers, just because they're the ones who have to have the fastest compliance of the quadricep tendons, because they actually get in the lowest seat in that step phase. They get in this real lower position, and they have to have this insane like strength and elasticity through that knee joint to sustain that. So chances are the guy had a really nasty standing vert as well. I'd be curious. That was, to me, that's so impressive.
I got to go find some video of that, because I'm just thinking about that. That's got to be crazy to see. I feel like we kind of already talked about this, but maybe like a quick recap. If you worked with young basketball players and wanted to help them become just better all-around jumpers, what would you have them do?
Yeah, just good quality strength program that's appropriate for age and gives them somewhere to go. Because I think a lot of times it's like, hey, we just need to get you stronger right away. And yeah, that's going to help you. But I would think I want it to be a movement first and build strength in along the way. So quality strength program, but one that leaves some room in the tank, and then differential learning, massive, just different types of jumps. Like, and honestly, maybe that could be as simple as, hey, if I'm a basketball player, maybe go play volleyball in the off season, right? Like,
yes,
I think that's okay. My dad was in high school. He said all the basketball guys played volleyball in their off season back when you could. And because like he said, like it's a different form of gamified jumping. And that emergence is the term where the sum of the parts is greater than the individual parts. And so often we train jumping as, here it's this part, this part, and this part. And I think it's just so powerful to just go do the different jumps and gamify them and get a fun, dynamic environment that rewards those things. And of course, the track and field side of me says, hey, go do track and field. go do the jumps and track. It's awesome. But yeah, I would start there. I think that's a good place. And the other thing I will say is, along with the differential learning, I think multi-throws with the medicine balls, both linear and rotational, and for distance, that's the thing with medicine ball throws. It's more like, all right, this is a side throw and you're just throwing it against the wall. It's like, yeah, it's kind of quick, but it's like, that's a lot different than throwing a discus 150 feet. So to have that true rotational, if you have a speed gun or just putting some sort of intent, or you have people and they're trying to push each other farther apart, maybe it's like a little South African chest throw or something. That type of rotational quality, I think, is also valuable. And just, if you have time, rounding out some of those skills, I think has good value with the younger ages, because they're going to be able to stack that into what they ultimately do. And then, the last thing is, I think people can have opinions on change of direction times, perception reaction coupling, but I do think the ability to run a good 505 or pro agility, just for the sake of I'm not even saying like game specificity, but for deceleration, acceleration, strength that can actually go into a 2-leg jump, I also think that's a valuable cross skill to have. So having some pieces of that in there as well.
I love it. All right, man. Last but not least, number 5. What's next for Joel Smith, man? What are you working on? What are you excited about? Anything?
Yeah. So a few projects. One is a swim strength book that's been probably 3 years to get done. So I'm closing in on the stages of that one. And then the forefront project, and this is kind of, as I mentioned, with gamified emergent jumps, differential learning, is a course that fuses a lot of gamified ideas with standard athletic outputs. So how do you could say, gamify running, jumping, sprinting to get higher outputs? And how do I fuse that into a programming situation? And the course is called Athletic Fusion. And I think it's going to be a really a truly different perspective, but it's one I found very powerful, as well as in my own training too. So that is coming up, and then I'm looking forward to track season starting, and whatever youth sports I end up coaching this year, I'm excited for those too. Always fun. So that's what's good these days.
I love it, man. Well, I'm excited. I can't wait. I'll definitely check out Athletic Fusion. That sounds very, very cool. And man, Joel, you've been amazing. Where can my listeners find out more about you and all the great stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, appreciate it. Just Fly Performance Podcast is a big one. And then justflysports.com. I find with AI, less website, like people don't go to websites anymore. So then socials
right.
just sports. So Twitter and Instagram.
I'll make sure I put links to all that in the show notes. And again, Joel, man, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mike.